thank you everyone for staying with us on Global Morning. Just a while ago, we're looking at the papers for you, and we left off on the Guardian newspaper. So let's return to the Guardian now and see what's more additional headlines we have there for you. All right, let's take it down a little. It says PDP says Wike not above party as disciplinary committee issues summons. Okay, and then what's more do we have here? It says households lament may spend 54.9% income on food, shun investments. I think what we left off was when we were talking about the tax issue, the VAT in particular, whether or not to do an upward review of it or not to, but we also agree that whatever decisions the government is taking at this point, it must realize that they will have far-reaching impacts, particularly given the prevalent economic hardship that citizens are grappling with at this point. So Ramsey has the next paper. That will be the Nation newspaper. The Nation newspaper also has quite a number of headlines on the front page of it.
All right, thank you very much, Uyi. Let's get to the Nation's newspaper where we have, well, quite a lot of headlines. Let me quickly start from the top above the header. I have this one which says Oyo to deploy 20 CNG buses given by federal government, part of the things that the federal government promised to put in place to alleviate the stress and the suffering of the people. Details read on page 27. Then this one says, woman held in Canada for threatening to poison Nigerians. Woman held in Canada for threatening to poison Nigerians. Okay, Osimhen seeks one-year loan deal with Galatasaray. Well, Osimhen's issue, so pathetic, but at least it's good. It's better for him going to Galatasaray instead of just staying in Napoli.
And being redundant.
Being redundant. That's more like rendering someone's career useless.
Right.
You just stay in a club. You're not doing nothing. You are not on their website. No one gets to hear about you. You are not in the first 11.
Right. So the question is, what value are you bringing?
What value are you bringing to the table? And what do people look for? Results.
Right.
And when the result is not there, there is nothing to end the
So that will make him surplus to requirements.
Surplus to requirements. All right, moving away from there, this one says, I think I will need to move to Edo 2020. That's the key card. Then some riders to that story. I will complete Oshomole's project, says Akpebolo. PDP will secure victory in Oredo local government. More riders to that story. New market traders, OK Igodalo. APC passes vote of confidence in chairman, secretary. Details read on page 5, of the Nation's newspaper. That's Edo 2024. You know what's happening in Edo State?
Yes, just 18 days away now.
18 days away. Well, I don't know. But then I think I was telling someone, I said, what's happening in Edo State? I was speaking, I think there was a platform where I hosted someone, and I was telling the person, why is Edo State's governorship election looking like a presidential election? Because the whole ups and downs, the campaign, and everything is making it look like
a general election.
A general election. So good. I just stay on the channel, and you'll get to be fed with more information from Edo State as far as the 2024 election, off-cycle election is concerned. Then the big story says treason. That's the kicker. Police place 20 million naira bounty on Britain Nigerian. Some riders to that story. We've talked about that. NLC President Ajero for interrogation over link with Wayne. You know, he was summoned. He said something that NLC can never be intimidated by anyone. And when he was going to see the police, he went with the son, the
Femi Falana.
Femi Falana. I think that is NLC lawyer. They went there together, and in just a few minutes, he was released. Then the second rider says, Britain does the kicker. Some suspects patronized my shop. Okay. That's about the treason case. Moving on, I still have some stories on the nation's newspaper, investors in $500 million FGN bond to get allocation Friday. That's from the nation's newspaper. Then the last I will be taking from the nation's newspaper says, Tinubu administration committed to security of Nigerians, says Shetima. Details read on page 6 of the nation's newspaper. And that's going to be all from the nation's newspaper as we move to the next paper.
The Nigerian Tribune, quickly, everyone, let's see what we got on the front page of it. Just above the nameplate, we have two headlines. One with a picture of the Minister of the FCT, Nyesom Wike, says PDP ready to question Wike, all right, to face disciplinary committee over alleged anti-party activities. Nobody is above the party. That's the NWC of the PDP they're talking. You can find details for yourself on page 16 of today's issue of the Nigerian Tribune. Queues for petrol persists as independent marketers sell 950 naira per litre. Bill Gates in Nigeria for talks on development solutions. FJ begins rollout of over 500 CNG-powered buses. Okay, we have that here on page 2 of the Nigerian Tribune. What's more, it says Lassa fever vaccine to save 3,300 lives averts $128 million societal costs in 15 African countries. That's a headline there. It has a picture of the Honorable Minister of Health and Social Development, Professor Ali Mohammed Pate. The big story, NNPC to be sole buyer of Dangote PMS, that's reports, with a rider as refinery begins processing of products. You will read of details on page 6 if you pick up a copy of the Nigerian Tribune today. FG prosecutes 7 illegal mining suspects in Kogi, Ondo. 10 maritime workers abducted on Bonny Port's Harcourt's waterway. Gunmen demand 30 million naira ransom on 3 kidnapped victims in Ekiti. Police declare Britain, Nigerian wanted over alleged attempts to overthrow Tinubu. League of Northern Democrats flags off 2027 battle plan. And then there's a writer, whose Southern allies to transition into national platform may ditch PDP to form a new party. What's more, targets Southwest Zone, right, as key to unseating Tinubu. You see, this is the issue with politics, Ramsey. Politicians always like to say about, let's capture power, let's recapture power, and things like that. Everybody is falling over themselves now to win the 2027 election, particularly the presidential election. So the goal is to unseat President Bola Tinubu, which I'm sure everybody has the right to, as long as they do it within the ambit of the law. I mean, it's a kind of ring, politically speaking, because in 2023, we saw how candidates also came from a wide range of political parties. So going into 2027, everybody has the right to aspire. But we know everywhere in the world that it is a tall order to be able to unseat a sitting president. The power of incumbency is always a factor, especially in a place like Nigeria. So for the opposition, this is a whole lot of work. Then you now find the League of the Northern League coming up now to say, look, we want to unseat the incumbent president in 2027, and we want to do that through the ballots. And they are casting their net very early too. Plus, they're also casting it very wide because they want to not just remain in the north, they also want to reach out to the southwest and see how they can get allies from there. So with all of this and the narratives you and I have had the last couple of days or weeks, is very interesting to know that 2027 will be intriguing, to put it mildly.
Sure. I think they should also know that the ruling government are also preparing.
Right.
Just the way the oppositions are preparing. So they are also spreading their own tentacles.
Tentacles, that's right.
Because you know the pedigree of the now president as far as elections are concerned. You know, he's been in the game for a very long time.
Right.
Don't be surprised that even the ruling party too are already putting one or two in place against 2027. But then I think nothing will be better than a major.
Right.
That's what I think.
A mega party.
A mega party, you know, to just come up and on sit. But in Nigeria, you know how it happens, except for 2015, when Goodluck Jonathan said, well, I just want to step aside because my ambition is not worth the blood of any Nigerian,
right.
looking at what he was hearing from the other side, and he had stepped down. Or else, in this part of the world, it's somehow difficult to unseat a ruling party, a ruling government. But then 2027 is still to come. Remember the drama, everything that happened in 2023.
Right.
That election is a kind of election, one of its kind, that Nigerians have not heard in recent times, looking at how people came out to vote and all of that. And that election gave people a different impression about election in Nigeria, different impression about the INEC, different impression about governance, totally. So 2027 is going to be another different ball game altogether again. But then the bottom line is that let these people just come together and try what they can try to see what will happen at the end of the day.
Well, we'll look forward to that, quite frankly, Ramsey. Okay, so that's the League of Northern Democrats there flagging off. But then we move to the next paper, which is the Vanguard newspaper. Ramsey has those headlines for us on the Vanguard this morning.
All right, straight to the Vanguard newspaper this morning. Let's look at this one above the header. Presidency denies alleged frosty relationship between Tinubu and Shettima. You know, Uye says something very vital. In every rumor, there's an atom of truth. But whatever it is that has happened, well, it should not affect the peace of the people, of Nigerians. That's what it means. This one on page 10 says, I don't regret joining APC. Amechi declares. I've not heard from Amechi in a while.
He's been doing the low-key thing.
The low-key politics. Then this one says, okay, Nigerian Airlines not delisted from operating to U.S. over safety. Federal government is the one saying this. Yesterday, it was on the papers that Nigeria has been delisted. And
the aviation authorities have come to explain, just to mention, because these things can be misleading sometimes, especially for people who don't follow through with the trajectory, right? The news we got, I mean, you and I yesterday, was that Nigeria had been delisted from being able to fly into the U.S. As a matter of fact, that will also impact an indigenous airliner, an operator, that's the Air Peace and all of that. But yesterday, the Nigerian Civil Aviation Authority explained that, look, what had happened was that the U.S. Federal Aviation Authorities have their own rules. And one of those rules or requirements is that if you do not fly for up to 2 years, say for within 2 years, you don't operate an airline into that country, even when you have met the minimum standards, safety regulations and what have you, you will be delisted, not because you have safety lapses on your end. So they said Nigeria got delisted in 2022. That was 2 years ago, because we hadn't flown into the U.S. We hadn't operated a flight into the U.S. within that stipulated time. So it has been like that. So it's not something that happened just yesterday, because the impression the news gave was that we just got delisted. The
impression was
right. So the authorities are working round the clock now to ensure that our status is reinstated in such a way that we can continue to fly into the country. In any case, the aviation authorities also explained that this same delisting that happened in 2022 does not prevent Nigeria from flying a U.S. certified plane into America. All right, even though it may be a Nigerian operator. So as long as it's a U.S. certified aircraft, you can fly into the U.S. But in all, we know for a fact that the Honorable Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Keyamo, SAN, was in Washington just a few days ago to sign a deal, some understanding with Boeing. He had also flown to France the other time to sign a similar deal with Airbus. These are all strategic moves to ensure that our aviation industry is better positioned, all right, for the realities of the 21st century as far as the sector is concerned. So I think Nigerians need to have this information so they are properly guided.
Thank you very much. That's really important because, like I said before we got started, you deserve to know.
Right.
And that's all you get. The only place you can get such vital information is on Global TV and, of course, the Global Morning. Thank you very much. That is vital, and it's good to know that air has been cleared. All right, now to the big story on the Vanguard newspaper. Anxiety as pump price of petrol raises towards 1,405 naira
per liter. You know, it's crazy, Ramsey.
God.
Yeah,
God.
it's crazy. It's crazy, and that's why you see the work of regulatory agencies like the FCCPC just started. All right, because petrol drives everything else, like you and I know.
Everything.
From your, I mean, let's talk as gentlemen. From your haircut to, I mean, you are putting on a very nice piece of suit now. Let's assume you made it for 500 naira the last time, maybe a couple of months ago. You go back to that same tailor, regardless of whether he's been giving you service for 5 years. He will put the realities in front of you and say, look, there's an upward review for X, Y, Z reasons. And we know that petrol is what underpins everything we do in terms of our socio-economic lives, all right, whether it is service or a product you're buying. And the next thing you're going to hear probably is POS operators telling you that, well, we've also done an upward review because we need lights to charge our POS. And really, the device is powered by lights. You know, so they are going to bring all those factors. They don't need to make sense to you. But when it's all said and done, it is the reality we grapple with.
But on the whole, I'm feeling like the people are just silent over this. The people in authority are just silent over it. Gradually, this thing keeps climbing.
Right.
From 700, look at where we are today. And this is so funny enough. This depends on the station, the filling station where you're getting this fuel.
So it's not a universal price.
Varies. It's not universal. It varies from one filling station to
another,
other.
right.
Then, like Jumai was talking about getting from a black market, their own, they can just tell you anything. And by the time you're stranded, you don't have an option.
Maybe there's a reason the market is black. Who knows?
The market is black, so the price, whatever you see, you take.
Right, because you're like somebody who is groping in the dark. So you don't know if what you're going to touch next is a wall or if it's going to be you falling on the floor, flat on your face, because you're in the dark place. You see, that may sound like a joke, but we're dealing with a serious situation here. When I see these guys with kegs, with gallons selling in this black market, I have two concerns. The first is the price, which I should be accustomed to by now, because as a young person, I grew up into this black market and fuel scarcity phenomena. The second, which is the one that even worries me more, is the authenticity of the product itself. Whether it has been adulterated, that's number one. The second is, what has it been adulterated with? I mean, I'm sure you recall, Ramsey, how that in this country at the point, the conversation was around bread laced with bromate. And then master bakers came up with this small disclaimer, like a caveat on their labels and what have you, to say bromate free, bromate free. Even at that,
yes, I remember.
NAFDAC had gone to some of these bakeries that were shouting bromate free all over the place, only to realize that they were the bromate users in chief.
Instead of bromate free, it was bromate food.
Field. Exactly. So what's the point? The point here is that regulation is another challenge. I mean, we live in a country where people practically, in broad daylight, sell the naira. So you go to a wedding, for example, you're buying 10,000 naira. I mean, you give them 10,000 naira, they give you 9,000, or in some cases, 8,500, because you want to spray. The blessing people like us have is that we have never believed in that culture, because I think it's barbaric to be spraying money. If you care about people enough, they are celebrating a big day.
And people have gone to jail.
Yes, for that. Whatever it is. I mean, you can envelope money. That's a decent thing to do. You can give them a gift item. You can do a transfer to them. You can write them a check. You know, so I'm saying all of this to say that we are overlooking many things. We're playing the ostrich over many things. I know of a man somewhere down south in this country who had even taken the CBN to court at the point over this idea of selling the naira. It's embarrassing. You go to some marketplaces, you see how they just start money, they just stack them up, you know, in bills, 100 naira, 50 naira, 200, 500, you know, they are selling them. They say they are new notes, they are mints, you know, and they have their own guys. It's like a syndicate inside the bank who also help them get, you know, mints and stuff like that. So these were things that started like a joke years ago, but today they have become like some subsector of some kind. until we get back to the fundamentals and address them, it's just going to be one small problem today snowballing into a crisis tomorrow.
That's true. I think all of this boils down to ego. You want to spray, let people know that I have the money. Spray.
So you want to show off?
They want to show off. And you know, Nigerians, you know, I am more than him. And you know how they name that generating power, I pass my neighbor. You know, Nigerians, anything ego, I don't know. But then these are things that should be dealt with. Some of the problems we have as a people is these little things, which are fundamental, which have psychological, emotional impacts on us. You know, so I think if that can be dealt with, it will help us go a long way. So spraying of money, like you said, it should be something that the authorities should frown at. Then why selling money?
The local currency.
Local currency. Selling to indigents. Even if it is to foreigners, why sell your local currency?
Even though there's a law that explicitly prohibits this practice. So the question is, who is enforcing those laws?
And why are the authorities quiet about it?
Well, I think, like Omar Wumi would say, if you ask me, right?
Now who I go ask. All right, finally from the Vanguard newspaper, before I hand you over to the capable hands of Uyi, 2027 PDP in talks with Kwankwaso Obi, says spokesman. Details read on page 9 of the Vanguard newspaper, and that's going to be the size of the headlines from the Vanguard newspaper this morning.
And incidentally, that's what we have for you from the papers on Global Morning. Today, we're sure you've had a great time, just allowing us the privilege of walking you through the big headlines, but we do hope you expand your horizon by reading details across these papers, particularly those big stories that resonate with you. We're taking a quick break, everyone. Shortly, we will return, and then we'll put our conversations on the road. Do stay with us. Global Morning is your ultimate destination for engaging political and economic matters. I am Uyi Agmofrebe.
And don't forget to include social discussions. Tune in every weekdays from 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. I am Queen Agaba.
For insightful breakfast ideas, business summaries, sports highlights, international and local news perspective, I am Anthony Momodu.
Don't miss the in-depth analysis of current and political issues by the Global Morning team and experts. I am Jumai Manson.
Catch Global Morning here on Global Television. Getting on the action. I am Edikan Michael.
We are
the Global Morning team.
Global Morning is your
I've seen watch your network, Global Television, and I think it's a refreshing addition to some of the networks that we already have, to have competitive media and looking at news from different angles. The place to go is to watch Global Television, because it gives you a different perspective, whether it is local news or foreign news, and even you're connecting with local communities in villages that I have seen. So we urge Nigerians that, this is the time to broaden the space, the source of information, of entertainment, and of enlightenment. And Global TV is the place to watch.
to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call the police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
The struggle as to strike.
The Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.
All right, let's get talking, everyone. The End Bad Governance protest, which some people rather call End Hunger protest, because for many of the people who had talked about that exercise the entire time, hunger was the motivation. Even though in the middle, started hearing about End Bad Governance, which made it a bit more controversial than it probably should have been, all else equal. Today, we understand that some persons have now been remanded in Abuja and, of course, in Suleja, which is Niger State, on account of that protest. In fact, these particular persons were charged with terrorism, not just because they did a protest or partook in a protest. Now, that has raised questions about the issues that protest was designed, or, if you like, intended to address in the first instance. We're joined via Zoom from the nation's capital here in Abuja this morning by Achike Chude, who is a public affairs commentator and a socio-economic analyst. Achike, thank you for breaking through, or allowing us to break through your busy schedule this Tuesday morning to join us on the program.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I'd like us to begin with the issues we're now seeing. I mean, one would have thought for a protest that was scheduled to hold between 1st and 10th of August, by now it should be behind us, like a thing of the past, as they say. But that hasn't been the case. As a matter of fact, it has now spiraled into accusations around issues that border on national security and plots to unseat a democratically elected president. As a Nigerian and someone who has been in the civil society space for quite a long time, what are your thoughts about this development?
Well, you know, the one thing they say about history, that those who, act in ways and manners that suggest that they are impervious to the demands of history will end up making the same mistakes again. You know, and so government, politicians, especially the ruling government, seems to have it all wrong.
So I'm going to just ask you this real quick, right? Let's backtrack 4 years ago. Of course, by next month, it will be exactly 4 years, the EndSARS protests. After it finished, we had panels set up, and across the country, state after state, and what have you. We also had a similar incident where quite a number of persons were incarcerated. Some civil rights lawyers are now saying that some of those persons who were, as they say, unlawfully detained have not been released till date. This is virtually 4 years down the line. What does that say about the protest culture, especially where it is peaceful in Nigeria?
Yeah, protests are generally peaceful in Nigeria. They have always been peaceful, and the people behind protests, they have an agenda, they have a process, they have an objective. And part of that objective is not to disrupt the very protests that they themselves are involved in. So they cannot sabotage their own effort to bring to attention some of the things that are going on in society. Because once a protest devolves into violence and the rest, then you change the narrative changes. And so protest organizers, that's the last thing that they want to do. So why do you not have violence in protests, during protests, especially when the police and security agencies, especially the police, are supposed to be there to ensure that it does not devolve into violence? It is simply because the state also has an interest in the protests, not to encourage the protest, but to disrupt the protest. So, and there have been speculations all this while that there are state actors that are involved in destruction of protests by introducing the violent element into some of these protests, so that the protesters at the end of the day and the protest itself can be maligned, and so that they can blackmail them. And I think there's a lot we have seen to show that this is perhaps very, very true. And of course, it will be unfortunate, and it is unfortunate that it is happening this way. So protesters are not violent people. That's not the reason why they protest. People that are protesting against hunger will not go into people's businesses to destroy businesses and so on. These are genuine people. Of course, you also have, violent non-state actors who can take advantage of the protest to cause problems. And that is why the police, that's why their presence is needed to prevent that action from taking place. You need to accompany the people. If they are going to government house or state house, you need to accompany them so that they can go there and lay their legitimate demands, at the foot of government officials. That is what usually happens, So anytime there's violence, don't blame the protesters or the organizers of the protest, but blame certain elements, non-state actors working with state actors to give the protest a bad name. You have to give a dog a bad name in order to hang it. So I think that is what the whole thing is all about. Yeah.
To be engaging with you in a minute or two, Chike, but I want to ask you this before he jumps into the conversation. As it stands right now, it appears all we have achieved is to distract ourselves, very sadly, from the issues that protest was supposed to advance, as we know it. One of them being hunger. Look at what the price of fuel says today, for example. That is in addition to the problem of accessibility, because it is one thing for you to say the price of fuel has skyrocketed. It's another thing that you have to queue up sometimes the entire day for you to be able to buy it. That is if it doesn't run out just before it gets to your turn. Are we still having those conversations today around issues of hunger and the basic amenity in this country?
No, you see, Nigerians are not distracted. They know what the goal is. I mean, because you know why Nigerians are not distracted? Because hunger is not distracted. When you are hungry, it reminds you. You feel it. You know it. And so as long as, you people remain hungry, their mind will also always be fixated on those people who are in power, who are supposed to alleviate the sufferings of the people, the hunger of the people. Those are the people that are trying to give a different narrative. Those are the people that are trying to divert the attentions of Nigerians. And so it is not unusual for governments, not just in Nigeria, in Africa or other parts of the world. It's not unusual that when they are facing critical issues and they are under the scrutiny of the people themselves, they look for ways to distract the people by creating one kind of problem or disturbance within the system to take the people away from focus. And so you realize, for instance, the protest itself, you can see the role that some sitting government officials played to try to give that protest an ethnic coloration. But thank God that Nigerians have become wiser, because as the government officials were speaking, trying to, introduce the ethnic element, hunger was speaking through the people also. Hunger was speaking to the people, pointing to them to the needs of the stomach and to the needs to feed their children. That's why this attempt, at ethnicizing the protest itself failed woefully, rightfully so. So the people, as I'm saying, that the people can't be distracted at this time, because the hunger will always remind them. When you look at your kids, and they say, Daddy, Mommy, I'm hungry, and you lack the capacity to feed them, you will remember why you are where you are today. So you can't, at that level, you can no longer be distracted. Ethnic jingoism, will not distract you. Religious attempt to whip up a religious sentiment will not, or geopolitical sentiment will not distract you, because your stomach is pointing in the right direction, that you're hungry and that you need to feed yourself and feed your children to be able. You need to have enough money to buy drugs to treat, yourself and your children if they are unwell and all that. So this is just the thing. And I think, okay, again, looking at the point, the government is in trouble. There is no doubt about that. And it's sad and it's unfortunate, because I don't want to believe that every government that comes to power, yes, we know the predilection and the proclivity of the Nigerian politician. They are there to line their pockets. That is in general terms, that's a general belief of a lot of Nigerians, or most Nigerians, if not all Nigerians. But I'm not sure that anybody that becomes president wants, to come in and then destroy the entire country itself, even if he wants to help himself, to things that he should not, that are unlawful or whatever. But I'm not sure that he's motivated to destroy the country. But the reality is that it is what you put in that you get out, and so we have. So I think that this is essentially the issue right now at this particular point in time. I don't even know how the government is going to go about resolving it, because they've been in office for more than a year now. And from the moment that they came to power, they kept on telling us what they needed to do in the economy, within the polity, to also create the right social environment for people to thrive and all that. And none of these things has actually happened. Things have gotten worse in the country. And so they seem to have run out of ideas. They seem to have no clues about where to proceed. And that portends a very grave danger to people, because this hunger, when it persists, I don't know, it's going to get really terrible. With their response, the response of Nigerians will continue to be through agitation, because they feel that there's no other way they can get across to government.
Let me ask, there is something very, very unique about the End Bad Governance protest, and that is the fact that notice was given ahead of the protest. The people, the authorities, the security operatives, everyone were made to understand that the protest was going to come up at a particular date. And one of the things that people were saying is the fact that some persons may come up to hijack the protest. And during the protest, we saw what played out. Despite the notice that was given, under normal circumstances, I think the security operatives should have put up measures to make sure this protest is not being hijacked. And what we're hearing now, we may not have heard it as it is. Do you think some persons have actually masterminded what happened during the protest, as it has to do with the protest being hijacked at some quarters in the country?
Nobody's in a position to hijack protests if they're not allowed to hijack protests. And that's the point I've been trying to make all this while. The protesters themselves are not motivated by the need to sabotage their own protest. There's no base, there's nothing to gain. Instead, they have everything to lose. Because when they embark on a protest, it is to send out specific messages to those that are governing. And so you can see what they are saying. They are not saying end the government. They are not saying it. They are only saying end bad governance. And there's no body that is reasonable. There's no politician that is reasonable that will fall to that message. It's a message, that is for the good of the country itself. So this is not about so I think that this is in essence what the whole thing. So the issue of hijack of protests is just something, it's an excuse that the police, that the authorities use all the time. And the police themselves should be ashamed of themselves when they say that people are going to hijack a protest, that they themselves will be involved in overseeing to make sure that at least it is safe and that it is not hijacked. So how can the very people who are supposed to ensure that the protest is not hijacked be the ones who say that it will be hijacked? That's a contradiction. And so these are some of the things that we should be interrogating, some of the things that we should be talking about. When we hear this kind of ridiculous statements, from people in authority, it doesn't work. It can't work that way now.
Sir, as it stands today, this same protest has spiraled, like I said a while ago. A Briton is now being wanted by the authorities in Nigeria, particularly the police. We have seen that. We've also seen that another Nigerian has been declared wanted. Issues around, plans or plots to subvert governments is part of it. In fact, the president of the NLC, Joe Ajero, has received a second invite from the police right now, because he is said to have been, quote unquote, the landlord of the British man who is now, has now been declared wanted. Is this not becoming more political than a social problem?
Well, the politicians, when they maybe because they are politicians, so they want to make it political. Really, but we know that there's a social problem. We know that it's a social. What led to the hunger? I mean, to the protest itself is hunger. It's a social issue, it's an economic issue. So if they want to politicize it, then that means that they are chasing after shadows, that they don't want to resolve this issue. And things will keep on getting worse. Because if the advice I can give to the ruling class is address the issues that led to this protest in the first place. If they don't address this issue, then it will continue again. There's nothing. You just talked about the fact that they gave notice about the last protest. But a protest can erupt at any time. Again, the exigencies of the moment of people's social environment and the hunger in the land can also condition that they can react at any particular point in time. So the government, needs to, beyond these palliatives that sometimes get to where it should get to, they should look for a way to address the fundamental issues. Because for as long as these issues remain and they persist, they will grow in intensity. And once they grow in intensity and there's more and greater agitation, you're going to have, how do I put it? You're going to have more resistance from the people. And more resistance from the people means more repression from the people, which brings more resistance and more repression until it gets out of hand. And once it gets out of hand, then anything can happen. And we don't want it to get to that level. That's why some of us are saying the government just has to look for a way to sort out this problem once and for all.
Please to leave this first conversation. Please stay with us, Achike. We're taking a break for a few seconds. We're back shortly with our second discussion. Stay with us, everyone.
All right, thank you for staying with us. Still to continue with the conversation, we still have Achike standing by. Let's quickly look at the issue of merger in preparation for 2027. As a matter of fact, the ruling party is on the move, and of course, the opposition parties are also right there. In one of the papers this morning, we saw that there is a call for Kwankwaso, Obi, and Atiku to come together, have talks towards 2027. Looking at the whole thing happening now, especially the disunity in the parties, the quarrel in PDP, even in Labour Party too, there are some form of factions at a time. What do you think? Is the merger ever going to make any difference in 2027? If it ever happens?
Hopefully we still have Achike with us. Achike, can you hear us, please? Okay, we understand that we lost connection with him. Hopefully we're able to reconnect with him.
Yes, we're able to reconnect with him.
As soon as possible.
The merger, when people hear about merger, it has happened before and it worked. Talking about the APC,
all the parties that came together,
yeah, that birthed the APC. That birthed the APC, right. And APC was able to take power. So a lot of people are thinking what they would have done in 2023, okay, is to have form a merger, a coalition coming together, these parties coming together to form a merger. They would have been able to unseat the APC, as some people said it would have been.
Right.
You know, that's a school of thought. You know, but first of all, you need to look at Obi, look at Atiku, look at Kwankwaso. There were some underground rumors that I think, was it Kwankwaso also, was supposed to deputize Peter Obi, but then some things played out. We're not quite sure about that, and that didn't happen. And Kwankwaso had to stand on his own with NNPC. Then Peter Obi had
with
to
NNPP.
I beg your pardon.
Right.
Then Peter Obi need to stand with Labour Party. Then Atiku stood on its own, and we saw what happened. In fact, PDP, I think the hope for PDP was actually slim because of the faction, because of the G5
Because the party had been cannibalized.
The party, yes, I think I like that word. So as it is, talking about merger for 2027, is it not too early to start talking about merger, or you feel it's appropriate as we wait for Achike to join us soon?
I'm not a politician, neither am I a campaign strategist, but I do know that these people, these political leaders you just talked about, Atiku, Obi, and Kwankwaso, I mean, these are people who were not born last night, politically speaking, so they understand how the dynamics work. They've been there since 1998. They had seen the military regimes in this country. So they understand that numbers are fundamental to success at the polls. So what does that mean for them? So they backtracked to, 10 years to 2014 and asked themselves, hold on a second, guys. What exactly does the CPC, the ACN, the ANPP, and other parties do to get to take power in 2015? Already say, well, what they had to do was to do a merger. Because that merger talk, Ramsey, just so we're clear, had started even much earlier than 2014. But you see, again, politicians will say we have Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, now the president, to thank for the leadership provided to be able to pull off that merger, which produced former President Muhammadu Buhari. So the guys in the Labour Party, in the NNPP, and in the PDP, of course, are now thinking, hold on, maybe that's the route we should go right now, because if we want numbers, we must do what it requires to get those numbers, because that's how we will win. So I can imagine people sitting somewhere now, whether in Nigeria or any part of the world, and brainstorming about this merger, but they also realize that it's not just the numbers first. We need the people with the clouds, the people who have the required level of influence. And they think at this point, you can't take away guys like Atiku, like Obi, like Kwankwaso to be able to make that happen. Of course, we're going to see a few other heavyweights joining them as we inch towards 2027. But as of today, the PDP too has come of age enough to know that, look, if we go into 2027 with this divided house that we have right now, it means we will fail before the race even starts.
Well, let's see what the committee set up will do, because the issue of
Wednesday committee, as I would like to call it.
The issue of Wike's stronghold, his stronghold in PDP, cannot be overemphasized. You know, that's something you can't take away.
By the way, I understand our guest is here now, Achike. So you were asking him a question just a while ago.
Yes. Welcome back, Achike. I was trying to ask a question concerning the merger. In the papers this morning, we saw that there is a call, a talk to be held between Atiku, Kwankwaso, and of course, Peter Obi of the Labour Party towards 2027. And we're trying to look at this issue critically. Would it tilt towards forming a merger? And some persons may say it's too early to start talking about merger. Some other persons may say, well, these three big wigs, if they come together, who are they going to affront? So on the whole, we want to know, what's your thought about these three coming together to form a merger? Is it really going to make any sense come 2027? Because you know how it looks like, all right, on a sitting government in Nigeria.
Well, a sitting governor has been beaten before. I mean, the sitting president has been beaten before, so it's not a new thing for us in Nigeria. And it is also not too early for people to begin to talk about a merger or the coming together of these three political parties or these three individuals. Absolutely. So it's not too early. But I think it has started already because these are exploratory talks. Don't forget that there was the possibility of one or two stepping down for the other before the last year's election. But again, some of them had their different, perception about and opinion about what they think, what role they think they can play in Nigeria. So nobody wanted to step down for one another. But there's a reality that has dawned on them. You also have a sitting, a sitting president, and just like you said, it's also not easy. And perhaps, the coming together of these three parties or these three individuals can perhaps put them in a stronger position, because the man that is in charge at the center now is if he could win when he was outside of government, then you can imagine how formidable he will be when he's in government, when he contests as an incumbent. But there are other factors that you also have to look at: the level of our democracy, the openness of our democracy, the fairness of elections, and the credibility of elections in the country. When you have elections that are credible and free and fair, then perhaps the outcomes of such elections might also be different. We understand the nature and character of elections in West Africa and in Africa in general, West Africa in particular. And we know that elections are not exactly free, fair, and credible. So you have political heavyweights trying to manipulate the process, for their own gains, political gains. And so, while we talk about, yes, the need for people to come together to form a more formidable opposition to the government of the day, you also have to look at the kind of elections that are held, that is sometimes not always determined by the outcome of the ballot box, but by other things that happen outside of the ballot box. So it's about who has more money, who is more daring, who is more manipulative, and more intelligent when it comes to the intelligence of the people of the world, and people who are willing or who are ever willing to act contrary to the tenets of democracy. So sometimes it is the strongest, it is the most cunning, it is the most devious sometimes, the most bold, that ends up winning elections, not essentially because they are the ones that have campaigned more. They are the ones that have the best message for the voters, because this, unfortunately, sadly, this is a reality, in our climb, in our own section of the world.
All right. There is a faction in the People's Democratic Party, disagreement between party members in PDP and Labour Party. As it is right now, before these things can happen, sometimes what really causes this problem is when the leaders are not in tune with some of the party members. Like we have in PDP, the Wednesday Committee for Wiki, as it has to do with anti-party activities and all of that. Don't you think these things have to be at least rectified, first of all, before they begin to talk about merger? Because if there is a faction, a house divided against itself cannot stand. So what would you have to say about that? What's your thought about it?
Yeah, you are absolutely right, 100%, absolutely. The PDP, is not what it used to be a long time ago. The PDP has been decimated in so many ways. So this is just a caricature of what you see. It's just a caricature of what the PDP used to represent in terms of strength, in terms of spread, in terms of the personalities that straddle the corridors of the PDP's powers, And so this is a greatly diminished People's Democratic Party. And that's why they can allow Wike to assert the kind of influence he has, even while working to undermine the PDP itself. So that gives you an idea of how bad it is in the house of the People's Democratic Party. You have somebody that has been clearly involved, engaging in anti-party activities. It is very as clear as day, doing everything to privately and publicly undermine the PDP, and the LDP is still a force within the PDP. It's a contradiction, because right now he's neither with the PDP, he's with the PDP by mouth, and then with the APC, at least in terms of appointments. And then the PDP lacked the ability to rein him in. I simply tells you that I agree with you that a house divided against itself cannot stand, and the PDP is clearly a house divided against itself. Then the same thing could also be said about the Labour Party. Unfortunately, Peter Obi has not been able to bring that party together. We know that party was a party of strange bedfellows. These are people that climbed onto the back of a Peter Obi when they saw the growing support that Peter Obi somehow was able to garner all over the country. And so if you wanted to be somebody, you wanted to be reckoned with, then you joined the Labour Party essentially because of Peter Obi. So some of these people are in a way a creation of Peter Obi, in a way. But somehow, from after that election, the Labour Party has been embroiled in all manners of internal crisis, and they have not been able to settle this crisis. What do you say about Kwankwaso, and his Kwankwasia movement? His party, the NNPP, has been riddled in crisis at the time he was sacked from the party. Then he restated him. So right now, at this particular point, I don't even know his status within the party, where he was one of the founders. So these are how. So I agree that they have not been able to bring their house together, put their house together, their acts together, get their acts together, and then it will be difficult for them to make any serious impact outside if they have not solved the family issues that they have.
Measure. Apparently, the conversation stretches to opposition politics one way or another. Incidentally, tomorrow, Wednesday, Nyesom Wike, Minister of the FCT, will be appearing before a disciplinary panel set up by his party, the PDP, to look at alleged anti-party activities around his behavior in recent times. Of course, just yesterday, news came through that he has threatened some PDP governors whom he claims are supporting Fubara. Now, he says to them that if they do not stop, he will make their states ungovernable. He threatened them. That sounds like a man who, in some sense, owns the party. Talk to us, Achike. What does that say about internal politics in terms of the internal mechanism?
No, you see, I don't want to. It's even a situation. The question really goes beyond even Rivers State and the PDP. It's not about what he says about the PDP or what is happening, in that party. But it says a lot about Nigeria as a country and how Nigeria has been undermined by the political antics of the political leadership. Because when you say that you're going to make a state ungovernable, you are the former governor of a state, and you have a lot of money. So it means that you're going to ensure that you deploy resources towards undermining the stability in another state in the country. And so how are you going to undermine the stability of a state in the country? You have a situation, for instance, in our first discussion, this morning, where we were talking about the police charging some people for treasonable felony, trying to levy war against the president because they are protesting, accusing them of all manners of instability. And then you now have a former governor and a very important person within the polity, the Minister of the Federal Capital Territory, saying he will make another state ungovernable. He will destabilize another state. What else would you call as how would you describe that action? If we were the police that were charging him, what kind of charges would they, bring up against him? So this is the hypocrisy. This is the double standard that is going on. But like I said, this speaks a lot, rather than speaking a lot about the PDP, but speaks a lot about the weakness of the Nigerian state. The Nigerian state is exceedingly very weak today. Cannot confront some of the myriads of socioeconomic issues that are plaguing her. And that's why we are where we are. We can't confront terrorists, we can't confront this, but we can confront comfortably, protesters who are saying, all they are saying is that they want good governance. So it's sad. Wike has shown the PDP that is bigger than them, and that there's nothing they can do to him. And he's done that publicly for how many months now, and they've lacked the capacity. So he can decide not to come to the meeting, to the panel, hearing, and he can decide to go there and insult every single one of them. you know, he's that kind of a politician. And then I'm not sure there's anything meaningful they can do to him.
I think the narrative around 2027 is still unfolding, so we wait to see how this will pan out ultimately. But we mustn't forget that in the final analysis, this should be about Nigeria and Nigerians. We would like to say a big thank you to you, Chike Chude, for taking out time this busy Tuesday morning to lend your voice to these conversations.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. You see, Ramsey, it's quite dramatic, especially within the fold of the PDP. You know, I was asking a PDP chieftain here on breakfast, I mean, this is our breakfast show, Global Morning, the other time, and I asked him, I said, look, how do you see you're suspending Deputy Governor of Edo State, Philip Shaibu, for anti-party activity? So you're suspending the National Vice Chairman, South-South of the PDP, Chief Dan Osiobi, for what you called anti-party activities. But you have not suspended Wike, who has been perpetrating this same infraction far longer than these two other gentlemen. His answer, his response was neither here nor there. I think he was essentially saying, look, the party does what it likes. I mean, it's at the discretion of the party to deal with all of that. But one of the things we've come to see in recent times is how that political parties, most of them, particularly the big ones, I mean, these ones that have so-called national spread, don't even respect their own constitution. And that's the reason you see that most times when they go to court, I mean, disgruntled members in their fold go to court, they say, well, the court says, these are issues that are already addressed in your constitution. It's an internal issue. So how do you come to court over these issues when your constitution is very clear on how they should be handled?
I think all of that boils down to personal interest. Because I could remember during, you know, in 2023, there were a lot of roundtables with the media by the then Rivers State Governor talking about Nyesom Wike, where we was having roundtable talks with the media, you know, media chats all the time. And what I think one of the media persons asked him a question. Don't you think there are some of your activities that may have amounted to anti-party activities? And he said something. He said, well, there are people, okay, that have done what he's doing before. And they got away with questioned for it.
They got away with it.
They got away with it.
So my case should not be different.
His own case different. So these things are internal problems. I think majority of the problem is from the party, and that is when you look at the foundation. What you were supposed to do, okay, things you were supposed to correct right from time, and you don't do it. A time will come when it will escalate, and you'll be looking for ways. To tell you the truth, before now, this committee set up to look into Wike's issue would have been set up long ago. I think the party were strategizing on what to do, how to handle the situation. Because Wike, whether you like it or not, has been in the party for a very long time. If one of the oldest member, as far as PDP is concerned. So anyone trying to deal with Wike's issue will have to be very, very careful. You imagine that statement, the statement he made to governors. Okay, these are not even governors from the South-South. Governors from the North. Yeah, I don't know if
you're saying they shouldn't take side with Fubara, your successor.
You know what that means. So I think the problem, majority of the problem, like you said, everything is spelled out in the Constitution. But are they really following the Constitution? Just like the way we say some persons are bigger than the law to an extent.
They're above the law.
Above the law. You know, to an extent in some climes. I think it's the same thing that is playing out in the People's Democratic Party. When PDP started, I think it was a clear cut. This is how we're going to be doing it. It should be based on zoning, this from this region to this region, you know, a lot of things that they were supposed to do. I think there was a fallout. And you remember how these grievances came. The national president, we don't want your share. It's not supposed. You know how the problem.
Yeah, there was again that tussle, some sort of supremacy battle over chairmanship. She should go to this zone. She didn't go to this zone.
That's where the problem of PDP started. Joshua Ayu factor. You know, and unfortunately, even the person that fronted Joshua Ayu, the then governor of Benue State, talking about Samuel Otom,
yes,
was part of the G5.
Ironically.
You know, so all these things, they are internal problems.
Right.
So if these things are not being settled amicably within themselves, I don't see them coming out to do anything reasonable in 2027. Because if PDP is not in order, if PDP is not strong enough, then there is no need including them in the merger. Because what this merger is all about is a stronghold coming to unseat a ruling party. So you know what it means. So any party that is not strong enough may not be allowed into the merger, as the case may be, although it depends on the actors anyway. I'm just saying. I'm not a politician.
But you know,
I'm just saying.
Right. Ramsey, I think he said two things that stick out for me, really. First of all was when he said, this is not the PDP that used to be. In other words, it's now a shadow of itself. But I think that's disturbing, very disturbing.
Disturbing,
yes, given the fact that PDP has some of the finest politicians, some of the finest technocrats, you know, across different fields of endeavor. Some of them came from the academia, a good number of them professionals. You have those who came from the corporate world, and so on and so forth. Some of them even from the labor unions and what have you. So if you have this complement of people, resources, you shouldn't expect a party like PDP to be broken like it is today. All right, that's number one. Then he also said, the party has come to a point where Mr. Wike can decide not to appear before the panel tomorrow, and you'll be surprised nothing will happen. The party will just come, put out a statement again, and things return to normal. But PDP's case, as it stands today, should be a lesson for other political parties, including the APC. Because you see, PDP ruled this country for 16 years, right, before the APC came on board on the 29th of May 2015. That, again, should be a basis for political parties to reflect and say, what exactly did the PDP miss? What lessons, very vital lessons, can we take away from that? That's on the one hand. On the other hand, the PDP itself must be sincere enough, courageous enough, to ask itself, where did we get it wrong? Because if Wike is saying that whatever I'm doing today is not new, it's not novel, people had done it before, even within the same party, they got away with it. Some of them at worst, they got a slap on the wrist. So why are you making my case exceptional? It means that something is fundamentally wrong. Because people say, if you do the wrong things long enough, they will become right. And I think that's where we're going to leave it on the program this morning. Of course, the conversations never end on Global Morning. Okay, thank you everyone for being a part of it. Just to remind all of our viewers that the views of our guests are their opinions. Ramsey Agbo, it's been a pleasure having you on Global Morning, first edition of it for you.
Thank you. The pleasure is all mine.
Jumai has been somewhere ticking the boxes for us, so she's not joining to close the program today, but you're going to see more of Jumai even on Inside Today. Just to remind you that on Inside Today, next edition, Jumai will be talking about the issue of device, whether or not your partner should have access to it. That's controversial as it is interesting. I will see you again. Welcome to Global Morning.
The death toll from flooding.
Most time our politicians just bring in policies too, for sure.
Incidentally, we have several more stories.
The legislature was carefully crafted to
22.2% inflation rates as of April this year. What does that say about where we are as a country?
I think Nigeria has resorted to being resilient.
Before you call the police station, before they even leave, they'll take permission from.
I don't think there's really anything on ground to improve.
We struggled, as he tried.
The Minister of Education volunteered and said, give me 2 weeks.
It was a lie. The president never gave me any deadline.